Good morning, everybody, and thanks for attending our Navigating the COVID-19 Loan Process. I want to thank Mr. Steve McCarron for being with us today, and he's representing our sponsor, Community Bank. Just a little bit of Zoom 101. Not sure how many of you guys have had a chance to use this before, but we'll just keep everybody muted for now. And again, that may save you some embarrassment when your kids or whatever come screaming in, or your husband or wife or significant other. This will be probably an hour max, and something, if you haven't figured out, on the top right side you get either a speaker view or a gallery view. The gallery view is much more fun because you get to see everybody who's on. For those of you who have not done the video yet, if you go to the bottom left of your screen, you can see where it'll say Start Video. So if you'd like to join us via video, that's awesome as well. So if the format for today, well, Steve addressed some of the options out there, and I know they've changed already since we've chatted in the last few days. So we'll follow up with some Q&A. And then, so if you have a question for now, let's just throw it in the chat box. There aren't a whole lot of us, so we might be able to unmute at some point. Most of you that have been on these before probably have seen it where you just put them in the chat box, because there may be 50, 150, 250 people on there, but good. But a little bit about Steve. He earned a BA in business administration from that university we call Pitt, and he actually began at his real world experience at Pitt SBDC at the Institute, which is pretty cool. He did that for 5 years, where he was a management consultant. Then he went on to, as many bankers seem to do, checking out different banks for about 7 years. And then he found his way to Community Bank, where for the last 7 years he's been the vice president and senior commercial relationship officer. He has so many millions of accomplishments, it would take a separate webinar to do this. So, but I'm sure the one he's most proud of is the fact that he is the vice president of the Peters Township Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. So without further ado, Steve, it's all yours.
All right. Well, I'll just open up with a couple comments, and then Brian, if you want to, if you want to feed me your initial questions, we can do that. So, just as an overview, certainly this is a challenging time for everyone. Small business owners trying to figure out their way through all this as they potentially sit home or have reduced revenue. So it's a challenging time for them, and now certainly in the lending world, in the accounting world, it's a complex time for us, as a lot of these government programs get rolled out. Trying to understand what is involved with these programs, how they can help small business owners. It's certainly something that we're trying to get our arms around, and certainly depending on the size of the bank and the complexity of the bank, being able to wrap your arms around these issues is certainly challenging. I just want to say to everyone today that I wish that I will have the answer to all your questions, but unfortunately, especially in regards to the payroll protection program, which we'll talk about in a minute, the SBA, Small Business Administration, has yet to issue guidance. As of 10 o'clock this morning, we were all kind of still waiting by the phone, so to speak, to receive some guidance from the Small Business Administration as far as the ins and outs of the program. So I certainly can shed some light on some information that you might not have seen or run across yet. But I will also let you know that you might have questions that honestly no one has the answers to at this point. In regards to the various programs that are out there, I'll just kind of give you a quick snapshot of the three major ones that I think have a lot of people's attention right now. And the first one is the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan. So the acronym there is EIDL. That is basically the SBA's disaster loan program. So this is a loan program that you apply directly online through the Small Business Administration, www.sba.gov. And if you apply there, you can apply for up to $2 million. If you are a for-profit organization, your interest rate is 3.75%. If you're a nonprofit, your interest rate is 2.75%. And you have up to 30 years to pay that back. A new provision that was added to the SBA's disaster loan is a $10,000 grant. So now if you applied for this money Saturday, I believe it was Saturday through today, part of your application process would also have a grant component. And when you apply for this disaster loan, you will receive a $10,000 grant from the Treasury Department within 3 business days. The grant portion of the disaster loan was just enacted last Friday as part of the CARE Act. And the government was able to implement that literally overnight into that program. So if you're a small business owner and you applied for a disaster loan last week before that was implemented, you will actually need to go back to the Small Business Administration's website. And there is I guess a separate grant form that is out there that you can fill out and be able to get that $10,000 grant fairly quickly. As far as the process goes, once you submit your application to the Small Business Administration, your loan gets assigned to a local caseworker who more than likely will be associated with the SBA's Pittsburgh district office. It's taking them about 21 days to get back to folks at this point. And once that happens, once they get back to you, they'll sit down and help you make sure that you're, asking, not asking for too much, but maybe also not asking for too little, as well as helping you determine what that payback period will look like. Again, you can pay it, you have the ability to pay it back up to 30 years. However, the SBA are setting guidelines as far as, what's realistic. And then they'll help you come up with that, whether it's going to be 15 years to pay it back, 20 years to pay it back, or, who knows, maybe the full 30. So that's just kind of a snapshot on their disaster loan program. The second program I want to chat a little bit about is the state's program. So the state has what's known as the Working Capital Access Program. So the Working Capital Access Program is up to $100,000 for any small business owner. The first 12 months is you don't have to pay it back during the first 12 months. It's a 0% interest rate, but you have 3 years to pay it back. And how the payback looks on that is basically it's a 3-year term, 12-year amortization. So basically your monthly, what that means is, and we see a lot of this in commercial lending. So for those of you that have maybe not done a commercial loan ever, this might be a little new to you. And that is that, your monthly payments will be calculated as if it's a 12-month loan. However, at the end of 3 years, you will have to pay whatever remaining balance is left. You'll have to pay that. So, so keep that in mind. Now, in regards to this working capital access program, here in Washington County, there's a couple of spots that you would apply to. And one of those spots is the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. They're one of the folks that are taking applications. And Brian, I believe, is the Peters Township Chamber assisting in those applications?
Actually, Steve, that program has been suspended.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
I'll get to that. Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. But was the chamber taking applications?
Peters Chamber's not. I didn't even think the Washington Chamber was, because they have to be a certified. The portion of the chamber may be, because you got
Right.
the
IDA
development. Yeah, the IDA.
The IDA. So correct. So the state of Pennsylvania, they have currently suspended that program. They had allocated $61 million, and at this point they have $75 million in commitments. Now, the reason I bring it up is because, and I'll get into this with the SBA program here in a minute, is my guess is that the state of Pennsylvania right now is looking for ways to potentially unsuspend that program. So I think that my advice to you as a small business owner would be to just know about this program and kind of keep an eye on things. And, maybe within the next couple weeks, we'll find out that more money has been allocated for that program. So that's why I bring it up. That's why I bring it up. And then as far as the loan program that we've been hearing about, and certainly has been spreading like wildfire at this point, is the SBA's payroll protection program. So the SBA's payroll protection program is the loan basically that you can receive from your local bank that in an 8 to 10 week period can be forgiven. So a couple things there. The government allocated $350 billion to try to help small business owners. And in order to facilitate getting this, it's playing out like a movie, getting this money into the hands of small business owners quickly, the government decided that these funds should go through your local bank. And so a couple of items there that you should be aware of. Not all banks are participating in this program. Right now, when we look at the amount of volume that could be generated from this loan program, it is literally overwhelming. Because if you think about it, just think about Washington County and all the small businesses. And by the way, on this payroll protection program, 501c3s can also apply. So think about all the small business owners and all the nonprofits that are in our area. Every single one of them can apply for this money. And so as a bank, trying to gauge how many applications we are going to receive is almost mind-boggling. And I've talked to large banks who tell me that they expect hundreds of thousands of loan applications per day for the next week. And here at Community Bank, I'm worried about 200 loan applications in the next week. So depending on your size, it'll be interesting to see how quickly everyone will be able to process these requests. The SBA is working on a streamlined process, which we really haven't seen yet. So I've got some real good contacts at the SBA level, and they've promised me that it's going to be a very streamlined approach, and I believe them at this point, but I can't tell you how that looks or feels. So in regards to where you start as a small business owner, I would definitely recommend that you reach out to your local bank and you ask them, A, if they're a certified SBA lender. That would be my first question. And my second question would be, are they going to participate? Because, and I'll just be very honest with everybody here at Community Bank. We're leaning toward participating, but we're not 100% sure right now. And there are many banks out there that are in the same boat. So those would be my first two questions. And then I will also let people know that there are national SBA lending houses that are available to take people's applications. These online or these national SBA lending houses have online platforms, so that you basically go to their website, apply directly online, and hopefully within 24 to 48 hours you have an answer. And so part of our concern, besides the volume, is the fact that potentially $350 billion is going to be exhausted, and we've heard it's going to be exhausted quickly. And we've certainly heard this from small business owners. I can't tell you how many folks have called me this week, and the first words out of their mouth are, "I want to be the first in line." Okay, I mean, this is like some kind of like Oklahoma land rush at this point. And I was on a webinar earlier this week with, and the presenter was the executive director of an organization known as NAGLE. And NAGLE is the National Training Association for the SBA. So this gentleman would be someone who would be instrumental in helping the SBA roll out the guidance on this program. And his comment on the phone on this webinar was that he believes that $350 billion in allocated funds will be exhausted by early to mid-May. So what this tells me is that there are going to be hundreds of thousands of businesses that, due to no fault of their own, could be left at the door with no money. So more than likely, what I've also come to learn is that more than likely the SBA Congress is already gearing up for a fourth phase to this stimulus package that would allocate more money to small business owners. So, as you think about, do I need to have my loan application ready by tomorrow? Because certainly, just on a quick side note, the earlier in the week, the Small Business Administration and the U.S. Treasury Department put out a press release that said that they were going to start taking applications on Friday. As a banker, I'm a little worried at this point, because as of 10 o'clock this morning, I had no guidance on how this program was going to look, feel, or roll out. But at this point, we're all kind of waiting to see how this is all going to work. But my comment would be, I don't think people need to rush out to their bank tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. and submit a loan application. I think that, I would caution people to understand how this program is going to work, and not going to work, and then proceed to going to your local bank to apply. Part of the payroll protection program is that the part of your loan that is not forgiven will have a 2-year payback. So it's very important that as you calculate how much money you need, that a vast majority of your ask is for payroll, because the payroll expense is the primary one that's going to be forgiven. You will have some non-payroll expenses that you can include that can be forgiven, but more than likely it will only be a small percentage of that. So I'm sure for those of you who have looked into this, you've seen things like rent, interest on mortgage, utilities, but I'm just telling you that based on all the things I've heard all week, yes, that will be forgiven, but only a small percentage of it. Now, this is one of the items that we are waiting on definitive guidance on. So potentially by 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock today, unfortunately, it might be a little different story. But from my higher up contacts at the Small Business Administration, that is what I'm hearing. And so what I caution small businesses on is over borrowing, because you don't want to ask for $100,000 today and then in 10 weeks determine that you have to pay, 75,000 gets forgiven, but 25,000 you have to pay back in 2 years. So keep that in mind as you think about this. The other thing I will mention regarding the payroll protection program, and I certainly want to give a shout out to all the accountants, CPAs, and payroll companies that are out there. These folks are going to play a very important role in helping us banks process these loans. The real big, when as far as getting together the information that you need, the primary thing that the SBA is looking for are basically payroll facts. So your various 941s, 943s, being able to justify how much payroll that you've had out there, and so being able to accurately document that information is key. And accountants, CPAs, payroll companies are going to be the folks that are going to help us bankers figure that out. So that's certainly something to keep in mind. Our hope as far as community bank participating, our hope is that once we see what this guidance looks like, and what's how involved it's going to be, that's when we'll be able to make a decision if we're going to be involved or not. At Community Bank, we very much want to make sure that we protect our clients. We want to make sure that I'm not going to hand you a loan today, and then in 10 weeks, when you apply for $150,000 and only $75,000 gets forgiven, I don't want to receive crazy calls from clients telling me that I didn't understand the program and now I put them out of business. I'm certainly worried about that as a lender. So I want to make sure I understand the program before we jump in with both feet. So I'll stop there. I've spoke a lot here at this point. Brian, do you have any questions that you had on your list that you wanted me to tackle?
One of the things we talked about, and that's why we sort of waited till this week rather than do it at the beginning of the week, was the fact that the PPP information, we were hoping to have most of that information by now. So you are correct. So one of the things I would like to comment on that is, as we get more information, it's probably good for everybody to keep an eye out there to see, or maybe even maybe contact Steve at a later date as well to see what's going on, or your lender, so you can know more. Back to the I do have a question regarding the $10,000 grant. Do you know what that's based on? Does that have anything to do with payroll, or if that's just general grant? And because I haven't actually looked into the specifics on that. So
yeah, as far as I understand the grant, I mean, it's basically like if you apply, the government's giving you 10 grand. It's not based on any one factor or another.
Because that's one of the important things, and I've done a million of those webinars as well, is the biggest thing is to apply, regardless if you want money or not at this point, because what they were telling, what the information that I got was, you can apply, get in there, and put your whatever the amount you're thinking about. You don't have to take it, or maybe you'll reduce your amount or whatever. But the big thing was to get your application in, and so that's sort of one of the things that we've been told. We do have a question here from Susan about the PPP versus the employee retention credit. What can you tell us about that? Any guidance?
Sure. And I have had that question. I have had that question come up this week. And the best thing I could tell anybody is to talk to their accountant, because their accountant can help them understand how the employee retention credit and the PPP will work together. That's actually a very specific question. There's actually it's really specific to the business that you're in. I have had many CPAs though tell their clients that they should and can apply and receive both. So I think the best answer there is reach out to your CPA and see what they recommend and kind of move forward from there. The other thing that I wanted to bring up that Brian had alluded to is, and I've got this question a lot throughout the week, which is, can I have a disaster loan and a payroll protection program loan at the same time? And there's been a lot of conflicting information about this. And maybe when guidance comes out sometime today, that we'll have a little different answer to this. But the truth of the matter is, you can have both loans. You can have a disaster loan and you can have a payroll protection program loan, as long as you are not using the money for the same expenses. So it's not like you can have a disaster loan and use it for payroll and then go out and get a PPP loan and use it for payroll. That actually would be ineligible. And so at the end of the day, 10 weeks from now, you would not be forgiven for your loan. But on the flip side, if you got a disaster loan to pay payroll, you can get a PPP loan and pay off your disaster loan. So it's not as clear as I think people would like, but that's kind of the best guidance I can give on that right now.
Yeah, that was another good point. Even the PETA loans, or the Working Capital Pennsylvania loans that folks were talking about, if you did get in there, you can use those loans to pay off your SBA loans.
Yeah,
that do have that 3.75% or 2.75%, depending on who you are.
And just on a quick note, well, that actually ties into a question that Tom asked. And Tom, as far as I know, there's not a separate application for the grant versus the loan. As far as I understand, you have to apply for the loan, and when you do that, the grant component comes up. So that's how I understand it. One thing I will say in regards to the SBA's website is that they received, when probably about, I'd say 2 weeks ago, when people started to realize that things were going to be shut down for a while and people needed to apply for this funding, the SBA's website got crushed. I mean, just absolutely crushed. It started failing. It wasn't working correctly. But I can tell you that the government went out and hired some private web developers at some large firms across the country to help them improve their website. And I've been told that at least this week, it seems to be working a whole lot better with submitting those applications. So if you tried maybe to go to their website and apply for this money in the last 2 weeks, you might have been a little frustrated or really frustrated, but I've been told that this week it's been a whole lot better.
Okay. I think you may have answered this one, but we've got a lot about guidance Any, you want to flip a coin or throw it out there? Any time frame?
I think Las Vegas is taking prop bets on when guidance is going to come out. So, so the truth of the matter is, when I was on that webinar on Tuesday with the executive director of Nagel, he was hoping Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning. Yesterday, so 2 days later, we received communication from the Small Business Administration. It was probably around 10 o'clock, saying that within 24 hours they will issue guidance to banks and lenders regarding the program. As of 10 o'clock, I'm still waiting. So, you know, challenging times. I know they're doing the best they can. They're great people. Everybody's trying to do the best they can. And, you know, we're all in this together. You know, and my personal opinion is that, you know, depending on when exactly the SBA starts taking applications, it is supposed to be tomorrow, but, you know, that might change. You know, that might change pending the, you know, because of the delay in the guidance. You know, I think that your bigger banks, you know, across the United States are going to be able to react a little bit quicker to that guidance and maybe start submitting applications a little quicker. But the flip side is that they're, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to have hundreds of thousands of applications. Where on the flip side, a bank like Community Bank, maybe it takes us till Monday to start actually submitting loan requests. But, you know, I might be dealing with, you know, a couple hundred loan applications, not hundreds of thousands. So keep that in mind as you think about, you know, what you need to do as a small business owner and where you need to go.
Cool.
If you don't, can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
You're probably waiting for me to chime in, huh?
Go for it.
So just to reiterate what Steve said, he is right on. Steve, your information was great. I'm going through the same situation where my company, Lendio, we are a market for small business lending. We have gone through, like Steve said, the changes. They keep telling us they're going to get it one day and then it's pushed to the next day. Absolutely frustrating for everybody because a lot of the questions and the uncertainty is still there. But Lendio has, our franchise has really gone to bat right now. We're actually working on with Jack. Was it Jack Henry? Does that sound familiar, Steve?
Yeah, Jack Henry. Yeah, sure.
We just partnered up with them to try and help out banks, giving them 3 different options. They have beneath them like 4,000 that they deal with in small banking across the country, as well as I think it's ProfitStar. Is that the other one underneath them? I think.
Oh yeah, ProfitStar. Sure.
Okay, so and we're partnering up with them. What that basically means is. I know Steve was saying he's not sure if your bank was going to be taking the applications. Obviously, a huge decision for you and your bank. Mm-hmm. I'd like to talk to you more about that later, by the way.
Sure.
But we've pulled on almost 2,000 more lenders that are allowed to take in these applications. And in order to do that, they only have to go on my website. We are working on the application itself. Obviously, like Steve said, there are there's still uncertainties for the specifics required to get approved, what's required as far as documentation, other than the criteria. The only criteria, and Steve, please correct me if I'm wrong, your small business just needs to have under 500 employees and needs to be in business prior to February 15th of this year. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, you are correct. Yep.
So if you have proof of documentation of that, then you can apply and you will probably, you'll almost guarantee get approved, especially for that 10,000 grant. That 10,000 grant is coming from a grant. It's free money. It's free money, basically. All you have to do is apply. But on the other hand, you do have to be careful because you don't want to overdo it. And there's a lot of times, we had a huge conference call yesterday where someone brought this up at the very end of the call, that he's worked for the Treasury Department. And he said, look, he goes, you have to be careful about any of the bad stuff that goes on. The people are trying to take advantage of this. Mm-hmm. You know, guys like Steve and I and anyone else in this type of business going through right now, you have to be smart about your decisions on who you deal with and explaining it to them and saying, hey, guess what, guys? You know what? I know it looks like it's all this and all this, but you still got to pay some of this back. And the forgiveness part isn't all forgiven, like you said. It's a portion, and you have to prove it. You have to take good documentation with your CPAs, with your accountants, your payroll departments. It's all something they're going to ask you to do. So, yeah. So that's. But Steve, one of the questions I did have for you was, you said it was the 2 years or 10 years for the remainder of the not forgiven part.
Right.
I've gotten a little miscommunication, so I was curious. You sound like you got a good in over there. So
yeah. So initially, when the program got rolled out last Friday, and I tell people this all the time. I've dealt, with, especially through my work at the Small Business Development Center in the past. I have a real understanding, and I've had the chance over the years to talk to various congressmen and congresswomen as well, and Congress lays out the framework for how this is all going to work, but how the real inner workings of the program, it's all really done in this instance by the SBA. So the initial guidance, Mark, was that it would be at most a 4% payback over 10 years. But earlier this week, as the SBA did slightly unveil a little guidance, we found out that people that did not have their loan forgiven would be a 2-year payback at 0.5% interest. So 0.5% interest, 2-year payback. So very, very aggressive payback. One note that I'll make, and I want to tie this into one of the questions I saw here in regards to commissions. As far as we understand, commissions are counted in the salary calculation. And why I wanted to talk about this is it's very, you can only apply for this loan once. So it is very important that as you sit down to figure out what that payroll number needs to be, that you are talking to your accountant, your CPA, and or your payroll company to make sure that number is correct. Because I will tell you, with the volume potentially all of us are going to see, if that number doesn't make sense to us, there's a good chance that your loan will be put to the bottom of the pile. And then certainly, speaking to Mark's point, look, I've talked to a number of regional local banks, and honestly, a lot of them are not participating in this. They're not. And so, here at Community Bank, if we decide to do this, we're probably focusing on loan and deposit customers first and foremost. And so if you don't fit into that boat and you don't want to be, number, 400,000 at some other local bank, Mark's option of reaching out to Lendio is a very good one. And especially Lendio, as far as I know, has an online lending platform. And I'm telling you folks, that's going to be really important. If you can deal with a lender that has an online platform, it is certainly an advantage, in my opinion.
Yeah, the toughest part that I think the banks are having, other than the risk, right, of taking on all this, all these potential loans, is the application itself, because they are trying to keep it simple. They don't want to make it complicated because that's only going to take time and energy and everything else that's involved with that. But what we've tried to do, and we're actually been in the process of doing this night and day, is getting the application correct for everybody. So one application would take care of being able to send to this lender or that lender. And like we said, again, just what is going to be required by the SBA for documentation, which, again, we still don't know specifically yet. So once we get that part, I mean, we're almost ready, up and ramped to go, to be honest, by tomorrow morning, as long as they can give us the last requirements on documentation. We've done a lot of legwork on this. My CEO, Brock Blake, is a guy who has a lot of connections. Well, he's out in Salt Lake City, Utah. I've been in touch with Mitt Romney and other congressmen, SBA leaders, and we've tried to make as many partnerships as possible, because we know that there are people in need out there. And in partnering up with banks, especially community, it's all about helping. It's about getting that knowledge out there to them. Let them know we're here to help. This money is for you, to keep you going. So when we get through this coronavirus, we're going to be good. And then we just pick up where we left off. That's the whole idea. It's as simple as that. We're working hard for you guys. So
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. We have a question from Susan about the $10,000 would be deposited as soon as 3 days after approval. How long are you hearing for the approval process?
So again, from what I'm told is that once you submit your loan application, you start to hear from the SBA. Once you submit your disaster loan application, you'll hear from the SBA in roughly 21 days. That's what we're being told. And then I also see that there was another question with the disaster loan in regarding to that $10,000, first influx of capital. No, that is a grant. It is a grant. It does not need to be repaid or paid back.
All right, let's see here. For Rachel, let's see, what can you tell us about the PPP and how employees handle bringing back employees when they are currently expecting unemployment compensation benefits from our state? Also, we can't get them to come back and work while virus is still running through our communities. SBA says if you maintain your workforce, SBA will forgive the portion of the loan proceeds. Can you talk to any of that?
So I've had this question several times during the week, and the best answer, the right answer to give you here is I don't know. The reason why I don't know is because this is a part of the guidance that us lenders are waiting on from the government to see how, because you're right, because there's a lot of businesses that have sent their employees home and subsequently filed unemployment unemployment benefits for. Well, how is this all going to work if now we're telling people, that you need to pay them and keep them on the payroll? I think, just my best kind of guess on this one is that, what the SBA is basically saying to us is, although some of these people can't go back to the office, or they can't go back to the job site, or they can't go back to the restaurant, we want you to keep them on the payroll. And although keeping them on the payroll means working from home or sitting on their couch, that I believe is what the government is expecting. But again, the honest truth is, until I see the guidance, it's really hard to answer that question, pinpoint with pinpoint accuracy.
At some point, we hope to have a legal session on the webinar as well. I was on one last weekend where they talked not so much about PPP, but just in generally about like unemployment compensation and that portion of it. So there was, the business lawyer, and there was the, the labor attorney as well was talking about that. So hopefully we'll be able to put something like that together. But
yeah, and yeah, certainly. I mean, that's, and that's, I've had so many people this week say, man, I want to be the first one in line for this money. But I know myself, I know a lot of CPAs out there, other responsible bankers and lenders, we're trying to get everybody to pump the brakes just a little bit, because without this guidance from the SBA, it's hard to be able to say, okay, apply for the PPP loan, it makes sense. Or, you know what, in your case, maybe apply for the disaster loan because it makes more sense. What I've been telling people all week, and I think people think I'm crazy on this, I actually really like the disaster loan because, in my opinion, there's less strings attached. And I mean, I know it's not forgiven, and of course, that's what everybody wants, is this forgiveness. But you get it's 3.75% money, which is certainly very attractive, and you can pay it back up to 30 years. So even if the SBA says you have 20 years to pay it back, I mean, that's still a low payment for helping you get bailed out of this situation. And you don't have to deal with all the potential, strings that might or might not be there with this loan program. But, again, I would just, recommend that, people just be calm and wait for this guidance to come out from the SBA, and then, make the best decision for your bank, or make the best decision for your company.
yeah, something else, just to summarize a little bit, it seems like if you're really looking for information, first of all, a couple of favorite websites have been the DCED website, because it's more PA specific. It will actually link you to the SBA, but the SBA is another site. But if you're looking for guidance, it's almost like a cooperation perhaps from your banker, from your CPA, and from your legal assistance as well. Because it can be daunting. There's no question, especially when there's, you get guidance that comes out and then maybe some different guidance and things like that. So one thing I would note is it was announced yesterday that Congressman Guy Reschenthaler is having with the Pittsburgh Business Exchange, is going to have a federal view, which I haven't seen much yet. We deal mostly with the state folks, but there is a webinar on that today at 3:00. Matt, did you want to say anything about that? Okay, maybe Matt's gone. But anyway, just if you're interested in that, Roberto says 4:00. Okay. 4. Yeah, it is 4. 4:00. But I'll be on that one. It's still open as far as I know. If you're so here's what we'll do too, if you don't mind. Is there anybody here mind if we send out each other's email addresses like we would normally do for a networking? And then if there's nobody that disagrees, then we'll do that, and we'll send out the link to that webinar that's this afternoon at 4:00 as well. So, let's see, what do we got here? Let's see. We have no more questions here. Steve, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think I've said it all. I just, again, what I just kind of summarized up is, we wait. Let me check my email real quick. Maybe give you folks all some breaking news here. Yeah, nothing yet. So, really what we're doing is we're waiting for guidance from the SBA, and as soon as we get that guidance, we'll be able to respond. And the only other thing I would say is I'd be interested to see, if applications are still processed, accepted by tomorrow with this guidance, taking so long, but we'll see.
Awesome. So just a couple things I'd like to add. First of all, thanks, Steve. Really appreciate you taking your time today.
You got it.
The chamber is open for business. Our physical office is closed, so Kelly is checking the telephone at least twice a day for our messages. Email is probably your best bet if you'd like to get in touch with us. I want to just make sure everybody's aware we got our new Facebook group out there, Peters Township Chamber Community Support. It's mostly for COVID-19, and it has updated hours for restaurants or whatever. And feel free to join that and post on it as you will. It is a public site, so we're thrilled that some folks are taking advantage of that. So also keep an eye on the emails that we're sending out, our Facebook page, our regular Facebook page as well. So a couple updates for next week. We're starting our community updates. So we have Peters Township community update with Township Manager, the Fire Chief, and the Police Chief on Tuesday. Wednesday, we'll do the same thing with North Strabane. And Thursday, we'll be doing Bethel Park, and more to come. Like I said, I'm working with Washington Health System right now, putting together a webinar as well for the health section of this. And if you have any suggestions, please feel free to let us know. So I would like to, again, thank Steve. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Community Bank, and thank all of you for attending today. And stay well. Until then,
thank you all.
Great day. See you.
Take care.